podcasters, and welcome to Sexplosion. My name is Caroline Chenier, and I'm your coach on all things intimacy, relationships, sex, and superconsciousness. This is my podcast teaching you about how to sexually liberate yourself to be confident, spicy, and fun around intimacy and sex, along with learning about how to build a great foundation for strong, long-lasting, and passionate relationships. This is unfiltered, uncensored, and definitely unexpected. Today's topic is all about psychosexual therapy. My amazing guest and I will be discussing the most common physical sexual issues, the most common mental sexual issues, and a bit about what it's like being a psychosexual therapist. So my guest, Vashti Hodge, has been a sexual psychotherapist for 6 years. She comes from a background of complete sexual openness, and it was a natural direction for her to take in her career. Her work is relevant to women and men with all sorts of sexual problems. As a psychosexual therapist, Vashti helps individuals and couples with aspects of their sex lives and relationships that aren't working. And later on, Vashti will give us some tips that she has found to be very useful for people around their sex lives. So, without any more delay, a very, very sexy welcome to Sexplosion, Vashti.
Hello, my lovely. Hi, Caroline. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, it's brilliant having you, Vashti. So listen, what I'd like you to do is tell you in your own words how you got to this point in your career and about the openness of your childhood, because I expect there are a lot of women listening to this that have probably found it a little bit difficult to talk about it. I know my parents did. I've told all you listeners before how my dad, when I asked him about erotic, what does erotic mean? He goes, ask your mother, then ask my mother. She said, ask your father. And then he said to me, and that was it. And yours was very different, wasn't it? So I'd love for you to tell us all about how it was for you as a child.
So growing up as a child, I come from a pretty open family. They're not true hippies in the sense of the word, but well, we are kind of. And it was just something that we would talk about at the table. There was nothing off limits. I was one of 4. My parents are still together. And by the age of 8, she decided, I'm the oldest out of all of us. We were living up in London at the time. And she asked us one afternoon, how did we think we'd all got there? so my funny way of thinking was I thought that men weed in a toilet, and then when a woman sat on the toilet, something jumped up into her and she got pregnant that way. Okay. And I can't remember how my sister said it. My brothers were quite little, so I don't think they were joining in, but they were kind of listening. And she said, well, no, that's not quite right. And like I said, my sister was asked the same question, and I can't remember what she said. And then my mum decided what would be really cool is actually she was going to draw for us, because my parents are both artists. She was going to draw for us what would happen. And so she kind of drew the lady and the man and what was going to happen. She didn't.
I mean, did she draw the willy and
I think she
did an arrow to go inside the pussy?
Yeah, I think she did. I wish I'd kept the drawings, but I haven't got them. But she was just so really cool about it. It was just normal. And I just remember thinking, that's really disgusting, and I don't want to do anything like that. Which
I remember I felt that too.
Yeah. But at 8 years old, that's probably a really good thing, isn't it? Because actually we don't really want to be sexual at 8 years old.
Exactly.
And then a few years later, I remember when I got my period, I just remember her singing happy birthday to me. It was just wow, this is the next stage. And she just treated it was totally matter of fact. It was normal. So at the dinner table, we just talked about relationships, sex, whatever. And it's something that obviously handed down, because when I had my children, I've got 3, and all of their friends used to come over. It was lovely. I used to gain lots of children, and they felt comfortable enough also to talk to me about things like that at the dinner table. And I was invariably, whenever I dropped a child back home in the car, I'd love to knock on the door and say to the parents, I just need to warn you that we've had a bit of a discussion today at the dinner table about whatever it was, sex or drugs or something, I don't know. So it kind of, sometimes I think children came to me to ask about things.
Wow,
And I
that's really
suppose
good.
it was really good, except, well, sometimes parents didn't really like it, but I wasn't going to lie about it. And I'm not
No.
going to sit at a table. And yeah, maybe there were times when I probably could have run it by a parent. But what do you do when you're put on the spot by everybody? Because at dinner, everybody talks, don't they? Well,
Yeah.
that was my experience. So I used to just sort of apologize and go, well, we've been talking about this in case they talk about it at bedtime. But it was never inappropriate. It was age appropriate to what they were asking.
Very good.
But if children
And did you do the
curious,
same with your children? Did you draw it as well?
I didn't draw it, no, because I might be an artist. I'm quite good at painting in some ways, but drawing people. But by now there are fabulous books out there that you can get. But we did sit, not so much my youngest one, because there was a 5-year gap between them, but my first two, we sat down, my now ex-husband and I sat down on the bed with them and we got a book. I did the same thing, asked them how they got here, and then we went through the book and discussed it all. So
My God, I was never asked anything like that. And
no.
even at school, I mean, obviously 8 years old, you're still in junior school, aren't you? Well, nothing was ever taught. I mean, it may be different now, I don't know, but it's only in senior school at whatever age that we did biology that we learnt it. I remember seeing a video, well, I don't know what it was called in those days. It would have been a film where this woman was having the baby and it all split. I remember going over to the sink in the corner of the room because it was a biology lab, so it had lots of sinks. And I was nearly 6 seeing that, and I just thought, oh my God, I'm never having a baby. And I tell you what,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why I never wanted to have children unconsciously, because I'd obviously made a decision in my subconscious mind then that I didn't want to do it. I didn't know how powerful that was, in my head then. And so my subconscious mind made sure that I couldn't have a baby. I did have a miscarriage, and after, I mean, it didn't grow. I mean, I never wanted children anyway. I was kind of doing what I thought I ought to do because that's what everyone does. But after 6 weeks, it just didn't. It stopped growing. That's how the radiographer woman said, "Oh, it stopped growing like that." Don't say it's died. They say it stopped growing. And after that, I think actually the only thing that really upset me was just having something that was dead inside me and needing to get it out. That was all really. But listen, we're going off the subject here. But
we're not, in a way, Caroline, because actually what you've just talked about and that experience, when we go forward and you ask me a bit later on some of the questions, that's going to be really important, because what happens in our childhood can have an incredible impact.
Massive.
Unconsciously and consciously on how we live our sexual lives going forward. And you asked me another question of how I got to this space. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how I finally got here is, people have always told me their story. Wherever I can go, I can get in a lift, and by the bottom floor, I have not even opened my mouth, and people have told me their life story. And so one day I just thought, you know what? I've just spent my life listening to people. I'm going to go and train. So
it was a natural progression, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was already a youth worker, and then I just thought, I'm going to go and study. So I studied part-time for 4 years, psychotherapy. And that's what I've been mainly doing for 12 years. And actually, it isn't 6 years that I've been a psychosexual and relationship therapist. It is much more detailed sort of in the last 3 years, actually.
And you were studying, weren't you, before that?
Yeah. So I'd always wanted to be a sex therapist. Somewhere had always been there in the back of my mind, but I really felt that I needed to learn therapy first. And psychodynamic therapy is kind of like you kind of learn about Freud, and it's the real grandfather of therapy, and it's a really good foundation and base to then add things to it. And I kind of went and worked with children, and then I worked with teenagers, and I've always worked with adults. And then sort of a few years ago, and one of my dear friends had done this course, and I was like, oh my God, I'd carried the application form around with me for years. And then about 4 years ago, one morning, I just woke up and went, yeah, it's ready. I'm ready to do that now. And I'm going to do the course, and then folded in psychosexual and relationship therapy to what I do already.
Fantastic. So what I'd like to ask you is, what is the most common? Now, I want to ask you about physical and mental. I know it's probably all mental, but mental ones are like invisible ones because they're in the head, right? But ones that are physical, what would you say is the most common physical sexual problem that you get?
And you're right, because they're very, very much entwined. And people have physical conditions and physical issues for their sex lives, but when we delve even into the physical ones, more often than not, the reason why they've come to me is because, or they've come to any psychosexual therapist, is hopefully they've all had a medical checkup to eliminate that there's actually anything medical going on that's causing it.
Because and it's up here.
It is so hard to disentangle them. So I mean, I've gone through my little book and of the things that I've helped and worked with, and I've gone, oh yeah, yellow's are physical and green is mental, but actually they're so entwined. But going back to your initial question of what are common physical sexual issues for women, for the ladies that I work with, it tends to be vaginismus, dyspareunia, which I can never say the right word. There's medical issues that then can cause it. So spinal cord injuries, I'm going to read it off my list, it's easier. Yeah. Peri and postmenopausal. Then we've got cancer can affect how we are sexually. MS can, diabetes, Parkinson's disease. Wow. All of these things can affect how we are sexually. And then with gentlemen, we then have the range
Before you move on to gentlemen, a lot of people won't know what those first few of them were. So if you wouldn't mind explaining the first, I think it's 2 or 3. The first one. I remember you explaining this one to me once. Yeah, that one. What's it called again?
Vaginismus. And vaginismus can be primary or secondary. And basically what happens is the woman's vagina, which is different from her vulva, the vagina is where the penis would fit inside. They are completely unable to be penetrated in any way. That means they can't use a tampon. They wouldn't be able to go and have a smear test because their legs can lock up and literally they can close themselves off. So it is impossible, or if it even begins, it can be incredibly painful. Then there's dyspareunia and
before you carry on with the next one. Yeah. So with those problems, is it usually something that happened to them as a child that made them, were they sexually abused or something that's made them want to not?
That
can be anything, can it?
It can be a huge list of things. And then if I kind of hold on to that to when, because it's also going to be is a condition that can be affected exactly by how we think, how we've been brought up. So when I work with somebody, if they haven't been referred to me already by a sexual health clinic or a GP, one of the first things I do is although I'm starting to take history, because psychosexual work is not short-term work really. No. The first thing I'm going to be doing, although I'm going to be taking a history of them, is I send them off to a doctor. They need to go and and it is so important to get across to all your listeners that you need to go and get medical checkups. Now, for some women, to the thought of then having to go and have a sexual I can't remember the word checkup, thank you, for vaginismus is dreadful and frightening and scary. So part of my work might actually be helping her to find a way to manage that so she can go to the GP to get checked up. But everybody I send off, and even if you go and talk to a GP and say, I'm suffering with vaginismus, there are other questions they can ask medically to have a curiosity and find out what might be going on. But then usually what happens is, if all those medical checkups have been done in whatever issue it is, that's when they present and are sort of come to see me, because then we're going to look at it from a different perspective. And that is when I do a very detailed history. And when I say detailed, I really do mean detailed history. And I am going to take them back. You know, if you were coming to me, Caroline, I'd be taking you back to your childhood. I would be finding out, that's one of those things. What was your parents' attitude towards sex? How were you taught about it? Were you allowed to speak about it? What did your culture say about it? And one of the questions is, how did you learn about it? Did you learn about it at school? So for you saying what you did at the beginning of our talk is that experience that you saw of something so terrible, somebody ripping, standing in the corner of your classroom, potentially going to puke into the toilet, into the basin at the back of the classroom, could have a massive impact. And it would be definitely one of the reasons how I work with some of the women, that something in their background has triggered that. And you're right, it could then be that they might have been sexually abused, they might have been raped, they might have watched something, they might have witnessed their mother being raped, they might have witnessed all of these kind of things, which can have a huge impact. And I have to find out all of these things. It's like being a detective in a way. And then when I've got that huge, and that can take 1, 2, 3 sessions. I don't rush it unless I'm working in short-term work, but I'm lucky. I can work long-term because I work in my private practice. I'm kind of not in with the NHS doing that so much now, but it takes time. And certainly with the ladies that I work with vaginismus, we might go 2 steps forward, but then there might be a fear and we might go back and start at the beginning and we go a few steps forward. So it's all kinds of things. It is.
Great. So that one is the vaginismus. And what was the second one on your list?
So we've got dyspareunia, orgasmic disorders, vulvodynia.
So the second one was what?
Well, that's pain. And I can never say this word right. Dyspareunia.
Right.
And that's pain. So that's people can have penetrative sex, but it really, really hurts them. And again, this is really important where we send them back to have a medical checkup. We need to make sure that everything's okay. Because although I've been trained clinically, because I do know medical things, I am not a doctor. I am not medical, I'm clinical. So we do have to make sure that there's nothing going on. And medication, there are so many different medications that can impact us. And there are so many health issues and diseases that can impact. You've talked about menopausal and sex and things, checking how old they are, checking where they might be in their cycle of whether they're peri or postmenopausal. What was it like for her mum? Did they have issues? So sometimes
but with the menopause, it's like the retreat of the estrogen that makes, well, apart from the sex drive going down, it actually makes you dry down there as well, and all the elasticity goes as well. But going back to the pain, I remember it being really painful, doggy style, right?
Yeah.
Where if they were too long, it would really bash something. I didn't know what it was. I did go to the doctor, and I'll tell you in a minute. But it was so painful that it was like a sharp knife going through me every single time. Oh my God. And it got to the point where I just couldn't that's my favorite one. I just couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I went to the doctor and they said, it's because it's bashing against my ovaries is what they said. And they just said, if you can find an angle that doesn't, and of course I did find an angle, but it really boiled down to the length. And if it was too long, it would, no matter what position I tried to angle it at, it would still bash it somehow. And luckily now I don't get that pain anymore, which is fabulous because it means I can just concentrate on enjoying the moment.
Rather than thinking, oh God, this is going to hurt. And that is how detailed I will go in asking people. Because when you've done the history, because you take a history that isn't predominantly sexual, you find out about how they learnt about it. But then I do go into asking intimate questions like this. And for some, it might be that actually we have to take that position out of your sexual repertoire, out of what is your way of being, because actually it could be as simple as that. But it's still really important that we check it's nothing.
So for me, it was bashing against the ovaries. So what else could it be?
Well, that's and because I'm not a doctor, I don't know.
Can it be a mental thing as well that there's pain there?
For some, yes,
really,
because that's kind of maybe an extension of. It's not vaginismus as such, but it could be that. So we have to check whether or not they're dry. I have actually been in the past working with somebody who's discovered that they aren't menopausal at all, and through another blood checkup and some other history they've had taken, that they are low in estrogen. So it's important to find out these things. If you can get a good GP or go along to your sexual health clinic. Okay, sexual health clinics aren't just there to clear up an STI. They can talk about all kinds of things.
Absolutely, yeah, I've been there,
and help you. And if you have got vaginismus and it is the point where you are potentially going to have a smear of some kind, again, sexual health clinics, it might be better to go get yourself referred to one of those, because they will have more time to help you go through that. They can have much smaller utensils, that's not the right word, medical equipment that they use to examine what might be going on. They can take longer. So pain can be all kinds of things. Yes, it can be in the mind, a bit like vaginismus, and the part of how we train and how I help somebody with the treatment that I'm going to offer and suggest to them wouldn't be dissimilar to what I would if I was helping somebody through vaginismus. And then,
so what about men? What about men then? What are their most common physical?
So let me just finish with the women, because there's also orgasmic disorder. There are women who can't have orgasms or think they can't, and again we get that checked out to make sure. And again, I've got a treatment. There are things that we can do for that as well.
And for the orgasmic one, isn't that just someone not getting them in the right place?
Can be, yeah. But it can also be a fear of letting go, a fear of being vulnerable.
Well, that's what happened to me.
Fear of actually showing somebody that I can enjoy something, not wanting to enjoy it too much, because then I might have to invest in a relationship. It can be a way of protecting ourselves, of actually, well, I'm not ready. Actually, I've certainly there, when I love somebody, it's not an issue, but casual or short term, no, it takes a long time, because actually I need to be able to trust you. I need to know that you're not going to take the piss. I need to know that you're not going to hurt me so much. So it's entwined in this emotional part of us.
Incredible.
How
none of this goes through people's heads, I mean,
no,
it's amazing what you do.
Well,
anything you want to say? Sorry?
Our biggest sexual organ, everybody thinks it's our genitals. It isn't. Our biggest sexual organ is our brain. It's our brain. Yes, there are parts of our body, which is going sort of into a different subject from when people talk about being raped or being abused of some kind. Our body can also enjoy it, even though our brain can't. And that's what fucks us up. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. That is what can completely mess us up, because there can be a disconnection. But if our brain is worried, stressed, tired, unwell, full of all these other things, then it is going to be really hard for us to connect and be sexual people.
Definitely.
So it's all enmeshed.
You know what's really interesting is that Greg and I watched, I don't know if you've heard of Black Mirror, but Black Mirror is a series where it's all individual episodes each week. It's not like a series. It's all a bit futuristic as well. And these two men played games, like video games. And the futuristic part of this was that they had this little pod that they stuck on the side of their head that connected to their brain. And they had an earpiece here so they could hear each other talking. And you put this little game card inside their console, and then they would just go like that. And they would be in the virtual. Now, this really can be real, because with the metaverse coming along, they can really be. So he came in there and he was looking at himself, and they were doing it was a fight game. So it's two Asian people, an Asian girl and an Asian boy. So one of them was a boy and one of them was a girl. And guess what? They started kissing, and they came away to each other, and they were like, And it actually got to the point where they couldn't do it with their partners anymore. They were addicted to having the sex inside this virtual world, which is quite frightening, really. Do you ever remember a film called Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock?
I didn't see it, but I've heard of it.
Well, I remember in that film, they had to wear a virtual reality glasses like that. They weren't allowed to touch. It's supposed to be really dirty to touch, right?
Right.
And it brought that film back because actually they were so like perturbed by this whole thing that they couldn't wait to be together in this virtual world, that one of them decided, let's just come out of this and meet as two men and kiss to see if that was, but of course it wasn't, was it? And it meant that they actually had to do it in this virtual world. But in the end, I mean, the whole fascinating, if ever you watch Black Mirror, you can't, it's all confusing at first. You think, what's going on? And then it all kind of comes out and it's fantastic. Anyway, the conclusion is they had a big fight, these two men, that day when they kissed each other, went off to the police station. The wife had to come and because one of them was married, the wife had to come and get him. She said, what is going on? Because she knew something was wrong because he didn't want to do it with her. Right? Kept saying he was tired.
Yeah.
And so in the end, he told her. So the conclusion was that they agreed that he would be able to do the sexual thing with his mate, with the game, and she would go and meet men in a bar. And that was the end. But my point is that it was all in here. And which was what you were saying. It's all in the mind. You said it's all sexual. It's all that biggest organ for sex is there. And that film just proves it, actually.
Yeah. And that also links into then sex addiction and pornography. And often when I haven't worked so much with people using pornography and sex addiction, but certainly boyfriends that I've been out with in the past, people who use pornography a lot and the pornography gets slightly more extreme or does get extreme, they then find it very difficult to come back to their partners because what they need to turn them on, it's like a drug, isn't it? Alcohol or a drug, to get that high, to be able to get turned on is so extreme that their partner that they're with, they can't get sexually aroused with them, and they have to either go off the fantasy. Pardon?
God, that's a big problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's quite a difficult one to work with because you kind of have to take them right back to basics, and that can take quite a long time. But we're complicated, interesting.
We are. Yeah. So is there anything else about women before we go on?
No, so let me talk about, so gentlemen, they come and it's easier for them because of their penises and it's outside their body. They're much more aware, which can also trigger a lot more anxiety and stress. With women, it's kind of almost invisible because a lot of it's inside us. So sometimes we don't even know what's going on. But for gentlemen, rapid ejaculation, which is what used to be called premature ejaculation, retarded ejaculation. So although they ejaculate, they feel they ejaculate, they don't, because there's a little complication on. Again, orgasmic disorders. Again, we've got issues about the size of their penis, and they get worried about that. And then, of course, sexual addiction. And then we've got all the issues of illness, cancer, heart disease, diabetes is a huge one to think about. I bet
diet has got a lot to do with it all as well. For some of them.
Diet can, but I guess that's something I might come to eventually. That's not something I tend to work with. I'm much more interested in, because if I've got a gentleman who comes to me and has got erectile issues, one of the things I do get them to go and have a medical, because you need to find out if there are any heart problems, whether you're on the border or have got diabetes and you didn't know about it, because they are very significant. And there's lots of different kinds of medication that also impacts our sexual libido and our ability to function sexually. So those are just some of the brief ones, really.
And actually, I got a phone I was reaching out to some people on LinkedIn, and there's this young man that approached me, and he says, I'm interested in what you do with intimacy. And so I explained to him, and he said, and so then he we spoke to each other. And he was saying that every now and again, he's only 25, and every now and again, he can't get it up. And he said to me, do you think that's a problem that will go away? And I said, well, no, because you're already telling me it's anxiety, and that you're going to be expecting it to happen. So yeah, it is a problem. And so what we're going to do is he wants to, because he can't afford to have therapy. So I'm going to make an arrangement for us to have in fact, this is something I wanted to do a long time ago, which was like SOS helpline, like a sexual SOS helpline. So you can just call me So he wants that kind of, and I advertised this a long time ago, but that's what I'm going to do for him. So he's going to do a subscription every month, and I'm going to give him so many minutes, and do it that way for him. He's just going to call me and just said, oh, I like to just talk about stuff. I just got to make sure it's nothing pervy.
You've got to get him, he has to go and speak to a doctor first, get himself off to a sexual health clinic to find out about that, because you don't even have to go through the doctor. Most of the sexual health clinics, which used to be called GUM, sexual health clinics, you can ring up and you make an appointment. He needs to get himself medically checked. That's really important before you do any work. Don't do anything.
Oh, well, I don't think we're going to do work because he can't afford it. It's just, I think he just needs someone to talk to.
And
I'll do that. I'll tell him.
He can get over it. And I'm not taking away from you, but often in sexual health clinics, in some of them, he will be able to access free therapy.
Oh, right. Well, I'll tell him. No, I'll tell him, because that's, if he's only young, and if he can't afford it, he can't afford it. He can probably do both. Go to them for free and have the chats, because clearly he needs to talk about it. There's another customer of mine that just needs to talk, and that makes him feel a bit better. Thanks for that. I'll tell him. I'll tell him for sure. Now, with the that's the physical. So what kind of mental issues do people come to you with, that women and men they come to you? I mean, I'm guessing it's all relatively the same, but tell me.
It is, absolutely. As I said to you just before we sort of came on air, I kind of went through them and color coded them, and they're all the same. They're both colors, yellows and greens. And the other one we haven't really talked about is sexual desire, our libido, and our ability to feel sexual. And I think that's hugely linked to our state of mind. And all the people that I've worked with over the years, and even the people that I worked with before I even trained completely in doing this, is if we are worried we're going to get caught, if we are tired, if we feel we're not being listened to, if we feel we're not being treated very well, if we're very stressed at work, if we are having anxiety about performance anxiety is a huge thing that I work with. If we've had a bad experience and then we completely run over, which is potentially what's happened with your 25-year-old young man, something might have happened, or somebody said something and he's interpreted it in a wrong way.
Yeah, that's what I told you.
All of those things can totally and utterly mess up, because what we have happen is we have our brain, and then that's kind of connected to other parts of our body, and at any given time this circuit between our brain and our body, our sexual organs and every part of us, can be cut off. So if we're getting intimate and then all of a sudden we hear the children move, boom, sexual, you've cut it off. If you're lying there and you're getting into the mood and then you hear somebody come in because your flatmates come in and you're frightened of being heard because you were told as a child sex was bad and you shouldn't enjoy it, and women must never moan or enjoy anything. If you've got that going on in your head, or sex is disgusting or dirty and it's only for children and you don't enjoy it, all of these things, boom, cuts off that connection again. Then if we're tired, it's cut off. If we're not listened to, it's cut off. If we are getting in bed, haven't kind of wound down from the day, and then you're worrying about everything the next day, boom, that's not going to make you feel sexual.
And I tell you what as well, is if you don't feel like it, and you know that, like, as a woman, and you know that your husband's going to pounce on you, your partner's going to pounce on you, that is a worry too. That's enough to switch you off. I mean, it doesn't happen to me, but yeah.
But
I mean, I know in the past I hated that.
Yeah. And that's a real big thing, isn't it? And that's something that I work with couples on, about what, because the other thing I do when I ask them is what do they need? What if I could wave a magic wand? I don't have a parrot ruler, which we all laugh about, but if my parrot ruler was magic, what would an ideal situation look like? And sometimes it's simple as, can we share the chores? Or it's talking. Communication is one of the biggest things.
Number one, isn't it?
Really, really important. But there's also a little bit of, sometimes we do lie there and fear the other person's going to pounce, because it can work both ways. It's not just women. Men do too. A lot of men fear that. But But sometimes, because I was just saying earlier on, our bodies can get in the mood without our brain being in the mood, and we can get to the mood, because that's a really important part of my work as well. Finding out how my individual person gets there, because for some, they actually need to have that. Actually, if you do start touching me and we do start hugging and kissing, actually, I might be able to get in the mood. So it's so nuanced for each couple, for each individual. It's different. And I want to blow the myth of men are, oh, we can get it up anytime and have sex immediately. That's all a load of rubbish, okay? Because they can't. Men need intimacy and love and care, and need to feel safe and secure, just like we as females do as well. That's just as important. And I think we need to think about that sometimes, certainly when we work, because society's still too much about, oh yeah, men can get up whenever they want.
But when they're young though, Vashti, because she's had experience with very young men.
But not always.
No, it's true, not always. But what I've found with my observations is that when they're young and they're in their sexual peak, just touching them like this can get it up.
Absolutely.
and oh my God, listen to this, Vashti. Oh my God. What time is it? Oh, that's okay, plenty of time.
I don't know the time. I've moved my
There's
clock.
one person in particular. He was lovely. I really liked him. He was very young, obviously, because I was only with when I say very young, I don't mean that young. He must have been about 25, something like that. And he was so excited by it, because obviously with a young man and an older woman, it's not the same as being with a girl of their age. They're both learning, they're both right. But going with an older woman who obviously knows what she's doing and is confident. I think when I used to do surveys, they say, why is it you want older women? They say, oh, because they're confident, because they know what they want. And then there's no mucking about, there's no games being played. So for this particular one, he literally hadn't even got anywhere near me. He literally, just imagine that's my pussy, right? He'd go there and he'd ejaculate straight away.
Yeah.
And like he was saying, oh no, I'm saying it's fine, it's all right, because obviously it was and it was like that every single time. I don't think he ever managed to get it in, ever.
But that is something I could work with.
Yeah.
Somebody like that, if it carries on. And you're
I
right.
don't know. He's in his 30s now, and I've not been in touch, but it'd be interesting to know. I'd love to ask him if he actually sorted that out. But you see, like bringing that to someone's attention, it's like they must find that really hard, But now I'd be fine about doing it, because at the time I didn't do any of this work, and I wasn't as open. I mean, I was open, but not as open as I am now.
Yeah,
I've just let rip now. I just get on with it and say it. Yeah. And I do remember as well when I was 20 with someone who had to shake it and really hard to I mean, I never said anything because I was only young myself, always younger than me, but I was probably only a year older then, but really shaking it before so that he could get it reasonably hard to get it in. And I remember once, oh my God, Vashti, I was traveling in South Africa, and I met this gorgeous, tall young man, blonde. He was beautiful, lovely olive skin, and came back with me, and actually couldn't get hard at all, and proceeded to shove it in as best as he could. And I'd never seen that before. Never. He actually had to. Of course, there's no way he could get it in. It was soft, but he was just trying to, how you try and get something into a sock, I suppose. It was like that. Didn't get it in. It was a really interesting experience, that one.
So he was somebody that would have needed a longer time to get aroused, but was in the heat of the moment, but wasn't prepared to go that way. And we can help people like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not the only. There's lots of us.
Yeah.
When you're finding a psychosexual therapist, inquire if the GP knows somebody, inquire at a sexual health clinic, or you can go on, which is called the COSRT, the COSRAT website, and that is sexual relationship therapists, specialists who we've all trained, and lots of us are accredited, and we've done proper courses, and we've been assessed to be able to be on there. It's like the BACP, which is the British Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists, and Counselling Directory. Again, find somebody that is prepared to show you what their qualifications are. There was something not long ago I was listening to on the radio where there's lots of people pretending to be therapists or have only done a little course or something. So I think it's really important that you find somebody who knows
what the information you're giving is very, very valuable to all the people watching. So thank you for that. What else was I going to ask? Yes. So what I'd like to ask you now is, what's it like? What's it like being a hold on a minute. What did you say? Yeah, psychosexual therapist. Yeah. What's it like?
Well, we get you get the odd phone call where somebody might be masturbating, so we don't take calls like that. We do get people who think that we are going to have sex with them to help them.
There is one woman. Do you know what? I watched a program once where this man had always been a virgin and he wanted to break his virginity, so he went to a woman who has sex with her clients.
Sex surrogate, that might be, and I think it's actually illegal in this country. We're not.
Yeah, he had to go somewhere else.
There are. I think there are medical exceptions to that, but I'm not qualified to talk about that. I really don't know. But we work to a very strict code of ethics. The most stunning man or woman could come into the room and I could be deeply attracted to either of them and really want to have a relationship, and I can't do it, and I would never do it. Even after the work is finished, years and years down the line, I would not be able to have a relationship with them.
Really?
I would lose my job. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we put in a position of power in a way, isn't it? And I could be exploiting them.
Yeah, but even years down the line, they could be healed and everything. I mean, what if that could be your future? Oh my God, rules and regulations would make it so you couldn't meet the love of your life. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that is what I signed up for.
Have you?
There's 8-9 billion people in the world, and so he might only be one of the ones.
Have you ever thought?
Absolutely no way.
No.
Oh, there are people coming to
Yes, what I mean, really nice.
Oh my God, yes. Fucking, you're like, yeah, they're lovely, but you talk about it in supervision. So I go to supervision, I take themes that my clients bring because I need to make sure that I'm working ethically. And actually we talk about that in supervision. And often when I talk about it, or a colleague of mine. What do you mean in
supervision? Someone with you?
So I have supervision for X number of hours of therapy. I talk to somebody who's already a therapist but then has become a supervisor, and we have to do that. I've had to do supervision all my working career.
No, but what do you mean by that?
So what I do is I call my supervisor. She's not like a shop floor supervisor type of thing.
No,
she's a therapist, and what we do is I talk through with her themes that are coming up in the work.
Oh, I see.
To check that I'm working. Yeah, we have to do it. Which another thing, when you're finding your therapist, ask them who their supervisors are. My supervisor is a senior accredited supervisor in many, many topics, and I've worked with her for 3 years. She was in fact one of my tutors 10-12 years ago, and I take themes of what's coming up, check that I'm working correctly, if I'm stuck, if I am attracted to into one of my clients, male or female, we talk about it, because we have to understand what that's about. Is that my own shit that's being put in the space? Have I not processed something that I need to take?
It's a little bit of a session for yourselves then, isn't it?
We have to do that, Caroline, because, and I do have my own therapy as well regularly, because I have to make sure my stuff isn't in that space, because it's not about me, it's about my client or my couple. So in fancying somebody, I will talk about that. And often when I've talked about it, and potentially it's the other way around, it might be me picking up what they feel about me, then often I go back and that's gone. It's not there once I've talked about it.
Right, you need it then. It's essential, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be allowed to do my job. I wouldn't be able to keep getting accredited every year or be on.
And how often do you have to do it with the supervision?
I do supervision every month for at least an hour and a half. And the more my workload increases, the more hours I do of supervision. Last year, I think I did over 50 hours of supervision because I had many, many clients last year. So
how interesting.
It is, but it's also to check that I'm working ethically.
Yeah.
I also obviously I don't just work psychosexually and with couples. I'm a psychotherapist first, and I work with a lot of insurance companies and doing short-term work. And I deal with all kinds of things, whether that's grief,
Insurance
death.
companies, hang on. Insurance companies.
So if you work for a big company, a lot of them will buy into an insurance company, an employment assistance program, so that their staff can access mental health support and can have 6 or 8 free sessions.
So this is as a psychotherapist, not sexual psychotherapist.
Well, actually, I have been working with couples in it.
Really,
yes.
so in a workplace.
Well, I don't speak to them in work. What they've done is they've come through their work employment assistant program, and then I'm an affiliate, a counsellor attached to that.
But with work, would it be to do with sexual harassment then, or something? Is it, how would
it be? But it doesn't matter what the work people say. Is if you are stressed about anything in your life,
right,
and you are not able to work, or you need to take time out,
okay,
we offer this service.
I thought it was purely sexual, but you're just saying whatever reasons they can access you. Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So that could be if they're having an issue in their relationship, and it's having an impact on their work.
Yeah, I get it. Oh my God, how
a lot of people present with they ring up and say, I'm stressed at work. Yet when I speak to them, work isn't what we talk about, because lots of people don't want to tell people about it.
Right.
So I do all kinds of work. I like a variety of work. I don't work just with one particular thing.
No, and that's good. That gives variety for you, doesn't it? It makes it more interesting. So because what you do is actually what you do. I skim the surface, you see. You go really deep, and so
absolutely.
And so what part of what I do is to do with consciousness as well. So I'm super conscious intimacy relationship coach. So like I did, I sent you that man that had an erectile dysfunction, didn't he? So when it's something that he just couldn't even go past it, that's when I sent them to you.
Yes, because you did initial part of working on thinking it was trauma, but actually when you and I discussed it, it wasn't trauma at all. It was all his medical conditions.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to be careful with both of them. And when I'm working with somebody that we've tried everything, then I might send them over to you, because they want to then concentrate on the next step of their relationship. So I kind of do all of that, but I cannot stress enough. Whoever comes to you, whoever is listening, you must speak to somebody medical first. Because if you come to me, although I will still work with you, I am going to send you off to go and have tests.
No, you have to cover yourself. You have to make sure all of that is okay first.
And also, I don't want somebody spending a lot of money investing something when actually we've discovered it's a medical issue and they need to go down that route.
Yeah.
So I can and talking about things will help, absolutely, but it is critical that they do that. It's really, really important that they get it checked out. And if a lady is suffering with vaginismus and is very, very frightened of having a smear or an internal examination, they need to talk to their GP about it. And then I would work with them, potentially with the GP at the same time, to be able to get them into a place where we might be able to help her to go and have that test.
Fabulous. So listen, we've got 10 minutes left.
Really?
And so I know it goes quick, doesn't it? And what I'd like you to offer our listeners is some tips. I know that there's no quick fix for anything, and you would need to do therapy, but is there anything in the first instance that anybody could do as a tip?
Biggest thing is communication. Okay.
That's the first thing, isn't
it? Okay. And it's very difficult for couples. Often when a relationship is beginning to fail, not work out, become heightened, often the first thing that goes is sex and our intimacy and being close with each other. So I think finding a way to communicate with each other. Potentially, if you guys are couples or individuals that argue, take yourself somewhere where you're not likely to do that. Go and have a conversation in the park or over a coffee. Communication is one thing. I think that's really important. 2, everybody goes, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Diarize having nights of when you're going to have sex. or when you're going to have intimacy. And people go, oh, I don't want to do that. We want to be spontaneous. No, even to be spontaneous, there has to be a little bit of planning. Okay, you know, you might be thinking, oh, right, when I get in, I'm going to do this. So you have thought about it, but actually use that as a way to get excited, to start being able to turn each other on, turn yourself on, build that desire. So we put in the diary everything else. Maybe find, people often say, oh, we haven't got babysitters. Perhaps connect with other families. There's mothers groups. Certainly when I had children, I belonged to a group of women, and we would share and babysit for each other so that we could have nights out. Date nights are really good as well. And if you can't afford to go out for a date night, we can walk, we can sit in the garden. Simple things like, if you sit at the table every night to have dinner, sit in a different place at the dinner table, get different cutlery, a different plate, a different glass, change it up a little bit. Maybe have the candle on, or instead of having the TV on, put some music on. Just simple little things like that.
Basically putting some effort into it, isn't it?
It is effort, but putting it in the diary, people go, oh, that makes it very biological and a bit mechanical. Well, yes, it does. But when we have such busy lives, what we can then do is we can know that on Thursday night, that's going to be our night. The children will go to bed early. I can spend a bit longer getting ready. Maybe my text messages start at 10 o'clock. I can't wait till this time. And why don't you wear this? And I'm really looking forward to being able to bath you when you get in, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So those are
great advice.
And one of the, you know, in my little book that I've had, and I refer to even now from when I was on my course, sexual, what do we call it? I'm just going to sit, I'm trying to see if I can find my page. But sometimes the best sex therapy tools I can give to couples is hold hands.
Oh yeah, touching
when you're out, and at night, a simple thing to do to begin with, no contact with each other, but lie and face each other and just look into each other's eyes before you go to sleep. And hugs, of course, cuddles and hugs, and not hugging that I'm having a hug and we're going to have sex now. Hug to the point where you can relax on each other, not be completely leaning on each other, but relax, just holding each other. And if you wait long enough, 30 seconds at least, your hearts can kind of be in tune and you can just be with each other.
That sounds so romantic. Oh, thank you so much. Listen, people may want to contact you. So please give them your email address, and I'm going to put it in the chat in case anybody wants it.
Yeah, you can contact me on, it's very simple, v.hodgecounselling@hotmail.co.uk, and you can also find me on the BACP website and the counselling directory website. I hold my head in shame, I've got to redo my COSRAT one, but yeah, they can find me in those places.
Well, that's fine. So I'll put it in the chat as well so they can get hold of you. Okay, listen, it's been amazing. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. It's a conversation I wanted to have with you a long time ago. So I'm so pleased you're able to come and have it with me. I've just got one last question for you.
Okay.
What I like to ask my guests is, what would you, if you met yourself at your young 18-year-old self again, what advice would you give yourself?
And it's so hard because I've been so privileged. I've done so many things. I'd probably just say, don't be so frightened to travel more, actually. Because I didn't travel as much as I wanted to, and I kind of want to do it now. But no, there isn't a lot that I would change. That sounds really
That's so good. Wow, that is so good. So pleased. Well, listen, I'm just going to wrap it now. I'm on TikTok and I'm very vocal there and very frank and very straight talking about all this sexy stuff. And that's at Caroline Sexplosion at TikTok. Hope you enjoyed listening this week. Thank you all so much for taking the time to tune in. Thank you very much to Vashti. To your success, I'm out.